Hello, everyone. My name is Victory, and welcome to another episode of TGIF with Kelblaise Studios. Today, we have an episode to go behind the scenes around South African businesses, running a South African business, and understanding what happens beneath the scenes. We know on TV we see too many adverts around top 100 CEOs on the planet, top 30 Forbes on the 100. It's all, marketing, but what's the reality? What's the situation on the ground? That's what these episodes are for. So today I'm with someone very special, someone very unique. She's a professor, she's a trailblazer, she's an academic, she's a global speaker, she's my client, and she happens to be my mother. Please welcome Professor Beatrice Opeolu. Professor Beatrice, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Victory of Zuke, my client and my son.
And my son, yeah, her son. Anyways, I asked myself, if I should do this episode. I felt like it was a bit of a conflict of interest, but here we are. Thanks to Glory, I will hold you accountable, Glory. But we're not there. Cool. Basically today we want to go into a bit of background. We want to see where you're coming from, where you are today, and where you're going. So I want you to feel comfortable. Don't worry too much about the wrong answer or the right answer. Basically, what we care about is the truth and something that would help someone make insightful decisions potentially in the future. So I've known you all my life practically. I have an idea of your background in terms of history, your story. But today we're not necessarily going to go deep into. We're going to maybe stay in the professional space, but we're going to keep the personal for another day. Cool?
Cool.
Safe? Fair?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's do this. So, our Trailblazer Prof, how are you feeling today?
I love the trailblazing part.
Okay. By the way, it's official. She won an award, so I'm not trying to make her feel good. It's actually true. She is a Trailblazer top woman. What was the award again? Trailblazing Woman 2023?
The SA Academy Trailblazer Award 2023. That was the inaugural one, and I was privileged and blessed to be the winner of that award.
Yeah. No, well done. That was absolutely well deserved. So I want to, you don't just become a professor. It's like you went from a village girl to a global professor, right? That's not something that happens naturally. That's not something that just happens overnight. There are people that you grew up with that never finished high school. Some didn't finish university. Some finished university but took other paths. So I'm curious as to what's the drive that takes you from the village to the very global stage?
That's a deep question. And like you said, we won't go into the deep of the personal part of my story today. But I think it's important to know that as a child from the village, there are many hustles that I needed to go through. But those are stories for another day. But for today, I started my journey from my village, Mashai, and then I moved to Lagos for my high school, and then Abeokuta later for my tertiary education. I wanted to have education because I knew education was my gateway out of poverty that I saw in my family. And so that was my motivation. I didn't want to be poor. I didn't want to raise my children the way I was raised, because there were many things I really wanted as a child, as a young girl, that my parents couldn't afford. I couldn't even ask them for a birthday party because I thought it would be unfair on them. But I wanted all of those things, and I promised myself I'm going to give my children the better lives that they would deserve. And I think that was my initial motivation. But as I continued to grow, I wanted to have a degree, go to the industry, work, earn some money, marry a man, start making babies. That was the plan. But somehow I found myself staying back in the university. The day I was defending my undergraduate project, the external examiner actually looked at me and he said, "Toyin, my home name, don't you want to become an academic?" Academia at that time was not, a career that is really rewarding. You will go to the industry, you will be able to earn, multiply by 4 of what they will pay you in the university. So it was like, first child, I want the money. But he managed to convince me, but there and then I decided I was going to stay back. But the day I got my appointment letter as a graduate assistant at the University of Agriculture, those days, I made up my mind that I had to have my PhD. So from that point onwards, I knew if I was going to be relevant and stay in that system, the PhD is the basic, is the minimum. And I remember when I registered for my master's in Ibadan, and I was, telling my dad, my late dad, I wanted to go for my master. He said, when will you enjoy the ones that you have done? You've just had a degree. Why this again? And I told him, Daddy, until you hear Dr. Opeolu, I haven't even started my career. And so that was the beginning. And it's been an exciting and rewarding journey so far.
Thank you for that. That's a very interesting point you raised. There were a few points there. There was the PhD part, and you say it like it's normal, like, oh, yeah, sure. I mean, everyone should get a PhD, right? But you'd be surprised how many people would see that as. But there was something you mentioned earlier, which was quite interesting, and I think it's the right platform to bring that up. The conversation around how education was like a path out of poverty for you. I've played in the entrepreneurship space for a while, and I see this notion that I really don't like, where people talk about how a job is the worst thing that could happen to you, or education is a scam. I think we've heard things like that. Education is a scam, this and that. But it sounds very ungrateful to me, because I feel like Africans especially, a lot of us got out of poverty thanks to being able to be skilled through education. So I don't know if you have any thoughts around that, or something you want to tell people who say education is a scam.
And as you can see now, I'm getting a bit emotional about this because of where I'm coming from. Personally, I feel offended and insulted intellectually when people that are not like me, people that don't come from my kind of background, come out to tell African children that education is a scam. And I will hear people talking about this, global billionaires that were dropouts, but they ended up being billionaires. But the question I asked a few people that have been able to ask that the parents of those guys, the so-called dropouts that became billionaires, the parents, were they forklift drivers like my dad?
Nope.
Was the mother a cleaner in the hospital like my mom? So the contexts are really different.
Yeah.
So I think it's another way. I see it as a way of enslaving people, because we know that it's through education you can acquire skills. It doesn't matter. I know and I understand that not every child from a home will be able to get to a PhD level. But at least give every child the opportunity, the chance to choose their own path. And I can proudly tell you that today, when I started you mentioned, my journey from primary school up to my PhD level. As I continued my journey, some of my friends and classmates, they didn't continue with the university path. Some went into hairdressing, some went secretarial studies, and we are all doing well in different places. Some of these people that I've been friends with since I was a teenager, we're still friends to today. I have a secretary to, a commissioner in Ogun State that is my very good childhood friend. I have friends that are, working with airlines. I have businesses, So everybody cannot be a professor at the same time. But I think it is important, and I can't emphasize this enough, that if you are a poor child, you are a child with no spoon in your hand. You don't have a wooden spoon or even clay spoon. Some people were born with the so-called diamond and silver spoons. But some of us, all we had were our fingers. If you're somebody like me, you need education, because it's the education that will leverage the platform for you. It's your education that will put you at the table with these other people that are privileged by the chance of being born into wealthy families. So I will say education is still the way. Education is not a scam. And I think the mindset behind the education is a scam is because people have different and wrong reasons or explanations about what education should be. Because education for me essentially is the knowledge and the skills and how you apply your knowledge at the end of the day. How you apply your knowledge, the skills. You were in the classroom, you were taught this, you were taught trigonometry in engineering. What does it mean in real life? How do you translate it to everyday life? I think that is what is important, and how we can now, and I know I'm jumping, I don't know if you're still going there into the curricular kind of a thing, and I think the curricula also that was sold to us It's now, it's lapsed in terms of relevance for African context. We need to overhaul what our curricula should look like. And I always say my A for apple for Nigerian children. It's wrong to teach a Nigerian Yoruba child A for apple. A is E in Yoruba alphabet.
Yeah.
Is A, you know. So it's a lot of confusion already, and that's it. And this child may never even see an apple.
Yeah,
you know,
we don't
I
have
was
apples
already
in
a fully grown woman before I saw a single apple in real life. So we need to. There are lots of things that we need to unpack in terms of whether education is a scam or not.
Yeah.
Because it's a scam for Africans. But when these Africans graduate and they migrate to Europe and North America, it's no longer a scam. They're not job ready for Africa, but when they get to Europe and North America, they're perfect fits.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I mean, I like that you touched upon that because I'm also going a bit off script here, but I think it's quite important conversations. You're in the higher education space, and these are things that are quite sensitive as well. From my experience, higher education really, no one really likes change there. But there was a key point you mentioned there around the gap between the knowledge and the application of the knowledge. I've seen that myself as well, especially in the engineering spaces where the focus for academia, engineering departments is how many papers can we write? Even though this paper can change the world, no, that seems to be the secondary part to academia. So what would you say now, based on these gaps that you had identified, because again, I'm going to get into the point about transitioning, but what kind of gaps do you think, maybe you can elaborate a bit further with the A for apples situation? For example, in Nigeria, we don't have apples, but for some reason, all our curricula is A for apple. So is it the curriculum itself that's affecting the application part of the knowledge? Is it the approach the teachers use that maybe they're not necessarily practical? For example, there are teachers that teach business but have never run a business. Would you say that's a gap? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's a lot, and my thoughts are just all over the place now.
Okay.
But I can say that curriculum is an issue that I think needs to be addressed. It must be contextually relevant, the curriculum. Even the science, in the science space, I used to tell people my science, the way I will interpret my science will be different from the way a German or an American will interpret their science, even though the principles are similar. An example is if you have a rainfall episode right here in the city of Cape Town, and there's runoff into a particular river system. The quality, the color of the rainfall, everything that will go with the rainfall, the runoff into the river will be different from if something like that happens in Danone or any of these places that are not paved and things are thrown and all of those. So if somebody from Europe or North America assumes that what happens in Cape Town is what I should report in Danone, then that science is contextually wrong.
Okay.
So even though, there's dilution, but sometimes it's not dilution because of the context on ground. So that is one part. So the interpretation of the science and the confidence of even Africans to be proud of their science and communicate their science without trying to conform to what would be acceptable to the norm. I think that would be a necessary angle to look at, intervening in some of these things. But I like the one you mentioned about, perish or publish or perish thing. I think I've been in that space all my life. I mean, I started as a graduate assistant in 1997. Up until 2023, I was fully in the university system. And I love the university system because that is where real knowledge is created. There's no doubt about it. Most of the innovations, most of the knowledge, even the things we go to teach in primary and high schools, it's in the university system that all of these methodologies are refined and, established. So the higher education sector is really, really important for growth of any society. But one of my triggers, actually, for leaving the mainstream university system as a full professor of environmental chemistry and toxicology was that. Because I will give you an example of some of the things that I was thinking. I've been doing emerging contaminants for over a decade. have done really good, cool stuff, scientifically, and we publish, we do things. But it got to a point, I'm asking myself the question, are the PAHs are measured in water or in the grilled meat or in the fish or and the pharmaceutical residues are picked up, the microplastics that I picked up? What does it mean for the child? The PFAS, what does it mean for the child that the mother is still packing his lunch in the plastic or still using the PFAS-laden pot to cook for? What does it mean? How do I translate it? What effect does it have? Because I'm doing all of these things. I'm training all the students. I want more impact. I want to be able to do my science in a different ways. And I'm not saying people that are doing that now, they're doing the wrong thing. It's okay. It's just that for my own purpose on this planet Earth, that positioning is no longer working because I really want that positioning was not really working for my purpose. So I needed to step out of it, as uncomfortable and scary as it was. We needed to, just go out there and bring some of these things to the table to see how we can transform it, whether it's through education, whether it's through training, whether it's through outreaches, to just make a difference in that space. So I think it will be important for scientists to engage more out of the laboratories with people that the inventions, the discoveries are meant to affect, especially. The people that will be affected by whatever we found. I think they are important in the whole matrix and we should engage more with.
So, I mean, you actually went straight to my sort of next question, which is quite cool. The question is around, you don't just leave a professor's salary. Funny story, by the way. There was a period where, I think I was doing my master's. I used to think we were broke, right? So I would not ask for money at home. I would be trying to be nice. And then one day, I don't know whether it was Glory that painted the picture to me, that no, she's a professor now. Like, we have money. I'm just suffering for nothing. Anyways, I digressed a little bit. That's a personal beef I've had for a while now. But I mean, it's one thing to sort of walk away from a job. It's another thing to just abandon it completely. To just say no more, right? Not only did you say no more to this job, you didn't say I want to take another job. You say you're taking a completely different career path. When I say career path, you've chosen to hustle like the kids. Again, that's an interesting one. It sounds like, based on what you just said now, it sounds like that transition was more down to the social side of academia. It sounds like there's a what's the word? There's a knowledge side to academia that academia pretty much has covered, but it sounds like there's a gap in social knowledge, the application of that knowledge in day-to-day life, in society, that seems to be missing. And it sounds like that was something that drove you away from that into what you're currently doing, which we're also going to go to soon,
Yeah, you're partly correct. But I think I had an exciting career, at CPUT, my former employer. I think it was nice where it lasted. And I will always be grateful for the opportunity to be an employee of CPUT, because that's where I really got the visibility I enjoy today. So, but at some point, you come to a point in your life, you start reflecting about the things you do, where you put your time, where you put your energy, and all of those. And especially as you grow older and you realize the reality of your mortality itself downs on you, that really, my mom, my dad, my grandma, my bill, so you're more intentional about the way you live your life, the choices you make, where you put your energy into. And I believe I'm still a scientist. I still do science. I mean, after I left CPUT, I think I resigned early July. I left in July 2023. And by August 2023, I was in Norway doing science, training a student. So I still do my science, but in a different way. The path I've chosen, I understand that there's no way I will hold on to a full-time professorship position in a university than I will be able to do the things I truly, really want to do. Because the things I really want to do is to make a difference. Like you said, not everybody can walk away with a nice paycheck that I had. Not everybody had that strength to do that. And I wouldn't blame anybody for not doing that. But I have the opportunity, I have the grace, I have the ability to say, you know what? I want to do this for a good cause. I want to do this. And so I had to take that because I see it as a call. I see that my positioning as a full-time professor in university, that time has lapsed. You know, and I'm a Christian and I'm unapologetically one. So, you know, in the Bible, there was a time God told Moses, you have stayed too long by this mountain. It's now time to move. And because I understand I'm on a journey, when he says move, I don't think twice. And that's why not many people will believe that I didn't even plan that I would live the way when I left. It was just time and I knew it was the third time. I prayed and I had the peace of mind that I had to, and I did. And the essence is to make a difference in the lives of others, to make sure that some of the challenges I had to go through, some of the issues I had to contend with, the younger ones will not have to deal with some of those things. Empower other people, create platforms for people, do the science that will be relevant, do research, conduct research activities that will make a difference directly in communities. So if I'm asking for any funding agency for any research grant at this time, the way I will conceptualize it will be different because I'm not under obligation to publish. I'm not under obligation to make sure that 4 students or 5 PhD students must be under that. So we can explore more of impact rather than the metrics. So I'm a fan of, you know, societal impact, direct impact on people, because I'm a very human-centric person. So than the metrics at the end of the day. Metrics are good, they feel cool when you have them, but it's never been my driving force at any point in time.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for that. I mean, I had the question now, but I wanted to go back a little bit on the career transition part, sort of going from, I think I need to make a choice and sort of go a different direction. The reality, and this is where the practicals of running a business come in. The reality is it's not a simple thing. It's also a big decision, and I know people. I've seen stories or situations where there are people who have families, they have kids, they have this, but they know that where they are, it's it's sort of time to move on. So, what do you have a specific advice that you give those people who are considering this? Is it something they should pursue? Is there something they should be paying attention to before they even make that decision?
That's a deep one. But first and foremost, I want to advise them that these are personal choices, and depending on where you are situated as a person. So I'm not a religious person, but I'm a very spiritual person. And I'm not ashamed of saying that publicly. So that is where I start. When I want to make any big decision, if anybody sees me making any crazy decision, whether I was leaving Abeokuta to Ibadan for my master's and leaving the master's in Abeokuta, whether I'm coming to Cape Town and leaving my family behind, I already had that peace of mind because I'm in that spiritual space of this is it, this is what you need to do. So that is the first advice. Be sure, however way you find your assurance spiritually, I think is important. Because whether we like it or not, the spiritual realm is real, the physical realm is real. That you don't see oxygen physically doesn't mean oxygen is not in the air. That's the simple explanation I can give to spirituality. That you don't experience it doesn't mean it's not there. That is the first one. But over and above that, I think if you want to take the step, I mean, for me, it was easier because the last baby in the house, she was almost finishing up in the university. So there wasn't much burden of, I still have to support this particular child or children through university for 5 years or 4 years without any saved up. Because somebody like me, I didn't have any saving. The only saving I had, I was able to save up all my working life, was the one the system forced me to save through the pension scheme. So I never had any savings like that that could, help me, that could sustain me for 2 years and 5 years. So I think it's important to be sure that your children will not suffer unnecessarily because you are making that move. Because I've heard stories of people not being able to afford popcorns for their children on important days because of that kind of transition. You've given these children this type of lifestyle, and now they can't live that life again. It can be depressing. And the other thing is that if you have a job now and you are thinking of transitioning, perhaps it's a good idea to start your transitioning as a side hustle, not go full on. So if you want to start public speaking, for example, start doing your public speaking as a side hustle. I guess that's what I should have. But I needed to, your mother.
Yeah.
I just moved. Well, there's no, but I think it can be helpful if people understand that there are challenges because when I started, there was a point somewhere there that when I got to the grocery store, I needed to choose is it toothpaste now or my body cream. So there will be those days, and we have to. People should know that it's not all glitter every time. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not great. But personally, I think I'm happy with my decision. I'm happy with my choices. It's important because for over 1.5 years now, right? The bills still get paid, right? So that tells me something. So I'm happy with that decision.
Okay.
So I think it's a good thing. The freedom that comes with expressing yourself also, I think that is another dimension. So you're losing out on this fat, cool paycheck every month that you don't need to think about because it's not your problem. It's a problem of your employer to sort that out. But you've given that up, but you have this advantage also that you can put your time, your energy to the things that are really important to you, to the things that are satisfying and more impactful. So that for me is a small price for me in the real sense of it. Leaving my paycheck was just a small price I needed to pay to have this life because I don't want to start this when I'm fagged out at 65 and I can't jump around and do, the way the systems are structured. You work all your life until you're 65, and then when you're 65, you have the pension pot somewhere. Now I want to enjoy my life. But look at me, the way I was jumping on flights 19 years ago, 2006, it's not the same way I'm jumping on flights now because now I choose. I choose where to go, when to go, because I know that my body can't accommodate some of those. So you trade what is important to you, and then you make your decision.
You mentioned something very interesting about the flight. I have another very interesting story, by the way. I don't know, I think it was a few years after we moved into Richwood. My mom was complaining that her passport was full. And me and Gloria were like, me and my sisters, like, I have to go to the embassy again and stay in line. This traveling, sometimes I'm tired. Like, we, at this time, by the way, we have never left Africa. Even when we left Africa, I think we did connecting flights where we saw Cameroon from the window. Anyways, but yeah, you mentioned some really interesting and very important things for people who want to start businesses and hustles. I think when people start businesses, and perhaps I guess this is an ad break, you can think of it like that. When they start businesses, they start based on the standard of what they see online. The nice looking videos, the nice looking top 30 under 30s. Like, oh, I want a business like that. But very few of them count the cost, right? So at Zuke, what we try to do, we try to be that bridge between your idea or your hustle or your project, and we try to get you ready to run a business. So when we say a business, the fact that you have a store and make cash doesn't make it a business. What we call a business is practically a franchise, something that can run without you. Hence, we use the term hustle to business. So if it's something that you're thinking of starting an idea, you have an idea you've been trying to develop, you have something you've been running on the side, but you want to transition it, but you need a way to take it from an operational, this thing that you're just grinding every day to something that can sustain you long-term, post-retirement, you should absolutely get in touch today and see how we can help you. So now I'm going to go back to the business development side because it was a very interesting conversation we had before you were about to leave. Those conversations where it sounds casual, like, oh, no big deal, like, I'm thinking of leaving. And I was like, okay. For me, I was just like, sure. I mean, it's December. Let's take pictures. I think I was in Joburg at the time, but I was in Cape Town. It's like, and then I called an old friend of mine. Let's take some pictures at Century City. Some professional shots just to ginger you a little bit and motivate you. And then boom, before I know it, I'm seeing on the group. I just handed in my letter of retirement or something like that. And I'm gonna be ending in July, August. Like, oh, it's happening now. It's happening. Okay. But I remember at the time there was a picture we had of the business, where the business is going. There was like this, we drew it up on paper and it looked very nice and it made sense on paper. Yeah. But I think it's safe to say that what we had on paper is not what we have today. What would you say was the biggest learning from that process, from getting like an idea on paper to sort of executing? What's that thing that people should pay attention to between the paperwork, the theory, as well as the practicals?
I think I will start by be authentic.
Okay.
Be authentic about who you are and what your values are and what competencies you have. Authenticity is key. So when you look about this other influencer on social media or this other peer of yours, and you place yourself on that scale, you're already setting yourself up for failure. Okay. So be authentic, be true to yourself, that I have this, I don't have this, I have this, I don't have this. By the way, that conversation that day, I looked at you and your friend, and I thought, these kids, look at them. Here I am, a PhD holder, feeling stuck. Because I want to do more, but I couldn't because of the paycheck and where I was, the comfort of that space. I wanted to travel anywhere. Just say, I'm professor at CPUT, I'm going for this meeting, I'm coming back, and CPUT backs you up, we're going to fund. It's that easy. But I needed to give that up to start saying, by the way, I was a professor, now I'm doing this. But be authentic about that. Don't pretend to be who you are not, or don't pretend to have what you don't have, because what you don't have, you don't have. That is the first thing. So when we started, I sat down and I kind of reflect on what are the things I have in terms of competencies, in terms of skills, in terms of my social capital, in terms of even the financial capital and everything. I took a stock of that, and that kind of guided me on the things I wanted to do, I would love to do. Obviously, research is my safe space. That's what I love most doing in the professional space. So I was expecting that in the next 1 year at least, I should be having projects that will run. So that is one that has not happened even now, but it will happen now. I can see that I'm at that point. But at the beginning, you're trying to scramble around, I want to do this, I want to do this, and especially because you've never been in that space before. There's no real mentor that you can sit with and say, guide me. I have a couple of mentors that I had to reach out eventually when I've already started to say, you've been here for 10 years. And thankfully, all of them, they encourage me to say, Beatrice, it can be tough, but don't give up. And sometimes when I say, but this, I say, I hope you're not having a change of heart. And I'm glad I listened to them. And I remember one of them told me, he said, Beatrice, when he was starting, many years ago, he's retired now, when he was starting in the US, his own mentor told him, so and so person, do you want to be a rabbit or an elephant? So when he thought, he said, he wanted to be an elephant. So if you want to be an elephant, you carry yourself as an elephant. You don't carry yourself as a rabbit. So the way you present yourself, the things you do, your lips, your imagination must be the imagination of a heavy animal, not a small rat. So, and in my Bible, there's that word that came to Abraham. This migrant thing, it's from Abraham. When Abraham left and he was going to be settled, and God said, look there, as far as you can see. Sometimes I pity Abraham. I used to pity his father, that his father was supposed to be, Terah was supposed to be the god of Terah, but I think Terah was hesitant to leave. But now Abraham also, all he could see was the Middle East. I'm sure if Abraham looked across the ocean and saw Africa and Europe and Asia, then he would have gotten everywhere. So the more you see, the more you imagine, there's power in imagination. So, but it doesn't stop there. You don't just imagine, as okay, I've imagined it. It requires hard work. Some people will think now, because I don't have a dean to report to or a director of strategic to report to, now I can just start at 11 a.m. and stop at 4 p.m. It doesn't work like that. I actually think I worked for longer hours than I was at CPUT now. But the good thing about the work I do now is that I get to do what I want to do. I get to choose what I want to do. I choose my pills, my demons, my addictions. I choose them the way I want to drink my poisons. So I drink them when I want to drink them, how I want to drink them, where I'm going to drink them, and that's quite priceless for me. So,
So
if you're
freedom.
starting off, you need sacrifices also. You have to be you have to accept that perhaps you have a lifestyle that you need to drop or modify. If you have this regular paycheck that used to come for over 20 years of your almost 30 years of your life, and suddenly you are leaving that to start from nothing, you have to accept that you may not have that kind of money regularly for a while, and be willing to do the mind shifts kind of a reflection to reflect your current lifestyle. So that is important also, because there are times I want to do some things and I thought, no, this is not the time. Whereas when the salary was so sure, I would just say, another one will come next month, or in 3 weeks' time, another one will come. But now I have to plan 6 months, because I don't know if another one will come in 3 months.
Yeah, no,
So that is the tricky part that is not really pleasant for startups.
the humility and the just accepting that you can't afford things anymore and just sort of slow down. I think also took me a
And that
while
you
to
can't-
accept that.
You can't afford doesn't mean you don't have that money. That
The
you
money's
can
in your
use,
account doesn't mean
but it's just not
Yeah.
the right choice or decision to make at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is quite interesting, I must say. But one thing I must say I really enjoyed, like when we building the business, or one thing I really appreciate you do, the quickness to adapt. I think I told you the other day that sometimes you scare me more now because you're more of a salesman than I am. Sometimes it's a bit freaky, but there's an element of this is what we had on paper, and this is what I've seen a lot of business owners struggle with. They have one idea that they start with, and they stay that path. And if you come in here, especially when they're older and you're the young one, trying to tell them no, pivot, they are like, no, 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 that's not what I want. But there's this degree of, it's like, I mean, for example, I think there were times in the first draft of the presentation where we talked about career coaching or mentoring, right? But then there was like the pivot towards more, for example, facilitation of because
and
yeah,
events,
because in theory you achieve the same goal, but the approach to it had to change based on what your customers are looking for. So there's a humility to accept that, hey, this is what I want, but there's also like this is what customers want.
Yeah.
So that's quite interesting. But now we see that evolving into all these other businesses. So I don't know if you want to tell us, by the way, at Zuke, we try to take hustles to franchises. So a franchise basically means you don't just have one thing that you sell. You sort of solving a problem and you take different approaches to solving a problem. So B Solutions is what the franchise is called, B Solutions and Consulting Service, not BEO, not BE, just B Solutions, the B, like with the hive. But under B Solutions, we've seen B Stitched come out, right? That's the African wear where we want to take that mainstream. What else are we seeing coming out? There's quite a few. Am I forgetting something? I'm seeing property come out, right? Suddenly, my mom became a property manager where Airbnb is sorted in 24 hours, just giving orders to yeah. So that's quite interesting. You've seen that also evolving into something else. Now we're seeing the women in higher education, women leaders in higher education summit coming up as well, and we can talk about that. But we're seeing all these different branches sort of unfold based on this 1 or 2 years of just working day in, day out, trying to solve problems of customers. So I would like you to talk a little bit more about it. Like, I like to know what the why is. What's the thing that makes you easily pivot? What's the one thing that makes you come up with this idea? What's beneath the surface that maybe someone needs to tap into to get to that place? Amen.
I will, first of all, return that glory to God.
Amen.
It's not mine. I'm just a blessed person. I used to tell people I'm not lucky. I seldom feel lucky. I only feel blessed when good things happen to me. So let me say that. And I like the way you started about what I wanted versus what happened. I remember the first paid engagement I had was 250 euros. Yeah, and I just said, okay, I mean, it's something, it's better than not paying. But I took it. And the career coaching thing, I think it was okay. We got some hours, we even bought by my former employer also to coach some women and all of those. But I guess as I was continuing, there is beauty in the power of reflection. So when you step out of your routine to do the unconventional, your creativity becomes unleashed, because now you start seeing gaps and issues and how you can provide solution for this and that and that. So I think that was helpful for me. I'm a very reflective person. So I will have a conversation with my son or my daughter. I will not agree with them, but after that conversation, I'm going back to my room and I'm thinking about it and I'm making decisions based on the conversation. I'm very different. And that has been helpful. I know we talked about agriculture yesterday night, late night.
Yeah,
And
agriculture,
I
yes.
had some time to reflect about that. I think I'm pausing because of that conversation we had. That's just an example. So I see opportunities every time. I see opportunities everywhere. So you wear this African wear somewhere in Europe and North America. Now everybody comes telling you, oh, Beatrice, this is beautiful. Oh, Beatrice, and it's like people love this thing. People want this thing, but they can't get it. I remember a colleague of mine ordering one dress from Kenya to the UK at a very exorbitant price. And it's like, but I can supply this 3/4 the price. So that is one of the things that informed Be Stitched.
Yeah.
So we're trying to, I mean, if you go to our website, you will see driving global sustainability using science and indigenous knowledge systems. So one of the indigenous knowledge systems and identity as African is our culture. Part of our culture is the way we appear, the way we dress. So this is heritage, kind of. So this is me also putting my heritage out there for people that want to be part of that. I mean, I'm wearing a pantsuit now. This is not my heritage, but I'm happy. I'm glad to wear it. I wear it proudly to share the heritage of my European and American friends. It would be lovely to have my American friends and, European friends wearing my heritage someday as formal wears to their offices, to their parties and all of those. That is the essence. We're driving global sustainability. We're putting Africa on the map. We're trying to do all of these things and at the same time create jobs. Everywhere across the globe, we're saying unemployment, job losses. Africa is worse. Most of the people we patronize, they are people not that are doing big businesses. They are small business holders that we're trying to support, help them also to earn money. So under this stage, we have these other women and men that are struggling, but we see talents, we see greatness in them, and we're trying to use that platform to support their businesses. That's what we're trying to do under this stage. And the women event, I don't know if you want me to talk about that.
Yeah, I was gonna. No, sorry to cut you there. Because now I know we have about maybe 3 questions left, and I know we're sort of out of time. So basically, let's talk about the future. Let's talk about the future. Maybe there's a bunch of questions as the future for B Stitch, or rather B Solutions in general. But maybe we should start with the Women in Higher Education Leadership Summit. It's coming up in September. Is this correct? So let's start with the event. What is it about?
Wow. Every time I hear about the Women Leaders in Higher Education Summit, I get really excited. So this summit, growing up as a young woman in academics, felt so lonely and hectic at some point, struggling to have your degrees and also grow and thrive. And I remember there was a year I borrowed money to attend an international conference somewhere in Abuja. And I remember Professor Grace Alele Williams was the keynote speaker that day. It was a women, they call it GASAT, Gender and Science and Technology Network. And I was at that meeting, so many things happened that day in that workshop for me. It was the day I thought, I want to be a keynote speaker someday. And I doubt if Prof. Alele ever knew that her speech that day, the way she carried herself affected a young woman in that meeting that year. That was 2000. So, and actually my MSc supervisor supported me also to go there because I shared a bed, because I couldn't afford a hotel room. But there was, those aunties that have this information and they don't want to give it. So I wanted to join GASAT. And because I was interested, what they were saying made sense to me. I could relate with many of those. And then a Kenyan auntie pushed me and gave my hand to a Nigerian Yoruba auntie from my tribe to say, take care of this lady. She wants to join her. And she told me, this person will link you up with the rest of GASAT. But this auntie never give me ordinary email address. And those days, it's not like now that you go to the internet and you type something and you just get all the info. It was difficult to have information. That was just one of the many hurdles where people, heard even information that was not useful to them because they were over 40, you are just 20-something or early 30s. So, but they can't use it because they were over 40. They have the information, but they put it in their drawer instead of giving it to the young one. So those early days, they taught me how not to be an older person to my younger colleagues. And I know many youngsters, many young academics, they still struggle with some of these issues. Apart from the fact that I was an only woman in a department for many years. So you know what it means. At some point, I had to complain that, listen here, I don't want to be the departmental secretary again. Because I realized that role was assigned to me because I was a woman, not because I was the youngest or the most junior. So there was, things like that even the men in the space, they didn't understand was counterproductive in the life of the younger person that is a woman. So there are issues of gender roles and all of those from the community that comes to the workplace that women had to deal with. So even as a leader, you are expected to be the macho leader, the leader that comes to the office and everybody sits straight. Not the leader that will walk into the office and nobody will stand up and come to hug. So it's all of those issues. And I used to tell some people, listen here, let me breathe. Let me lead as a woman. I'm feminine. So it's okay for me to hug my secretary. And if I need to put my secretary straight, my secretary knows that she needed to deliver. So the things that are peculiar to men, issues of having to overwork yourself to prove a point. I remember there was a time I would rewrite my email 3-4 times just to be sure that there's no grammatical error that another man colleague or boss will pick up. But over the years, I realized that men will just make all kinds of grammatical errors in their mails, and nobody bothered. So those are the things. So women tend to put unnecessary pressure on themselves. Sometimes they don't have the support system to guide them through some of those issues. There are issues of sexual harassment in workplaces. There are issues of bullying. How do we navigate it? And in fact, when you get to the leadership position, it becomes even cumbersome because at that level, it's more lonely. You seldom have true friends that will tell you straight or give it to you straight. They want to tell you the things you want to hear. So these are the things we're bringing into the space. We're bringing women leaders, people that have led before, people that are still leading, and people that will yet lead in the future, that will take the batons from the ones in my generation to the same space, to discuss on these issues, share experiences, foster networks, gather new partners and collaborators, expose the younger ones to mentors, to potential mentorship opportunities, so that we leave that room after those 2 days more empowered and stronger. And at the end of the day, I think the end goal there is to foster this strong community of women leaders that we can multiply across Africa and perhaps take outside of Africa to the rest of the globe in future.
Okay. No, that's interesting.
I
So,
hope that
yeah, no,
summarizes.
I mean, I wanted to ask, so with the event, who should be there, right? Who is it just for women? Are guys invited too? I mean, I've been in some of these women events before, and I feel like I wasn't really, I was the enemy. So is this one of those events? What's that like in terms of who should be there?
You know, that's a very important question you just asked me, Victory. Interestingly, in our organizing committee, right now we have 2 men.
Okay.
So my positioning is you can't be a voice of inclusivity and not be inclusive yourself. So if you follow some of the things I've been doing, whether we're going for the Science Summit in New York or something, I always try as much as possible to be as inclusive as possible. So we will have men, we have women, we have young stars, we have, just to make sure that a voice is heard. So the event there, we have men, actually as part of our organizing committee, 2 men will be part of the organizing committee, and the event is open to men to come and attend. And we actually have a male speaker now.
Okay.
His name is not out there yet, but we announce him soon. And he's loaded, he's passionate about men also. He's doing wonderful work and research all across Africa and UK with women. And so he will be one of our speakers also. So it's open to men. We welcome men because we want to hear the voices of men. Like I mentioned earlier, sometimes men behave in a particular way that women seem sensitive to because they don't understand where that sensitivity is coming from. So, but when they come to the space and we have this dialogue and they're able also to express why they respond in a particular way to certain issues, then we can come to an understanding. And then we can navigate some of these issues better. And perhaps maybe in the next few years, 5, 10 years, I hope, we will be able to say, this far God has helped us and we think we have made a mark eventually. So it's open to men. Men are welcome to register. And registration is now open, 5,000 for early bird. The standard is 6,000 rand. And we have registration opportunities for groups of 5 and groups of 10 also. Groups of 5, 20,000 rand, and groups of 10, 38,000 rand.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. So, I mean, I want to ask this. I know we're rounding up now. I think there's 2 questions left. So if we were to have this conversation, say 3 years from now, we're in the same chair and we're discussing, what would you say would have been a win for B Solutions, the franchise? What would be success 3 years from now?
Success for me, 3 years from now, will be seeing these amazing things that I'm doing with women and youngsters flourish. The tailors from B-Stitch, for example, seeing their businesses grow further, and they also, training other people and bringing other people to the space. Seeing these women, the emerging leaders in higher education sector, seeing some of them becoming deans and directors and deputy vice chancellors. And, it's possible because I've been there and I've seen transformation. I've seen how a girl started as an undergraduate shy student that I taught water quality. And today she's a PhD student, doing very well, traveled the world, and she's all over the place. So I've seen this transformation. It's possible.
Okay.
And I see colleagues also raising powerful people. So for me, if we're able to get this critical mass of women leaders, of entrepreneurs, of businesses all across Africa, it will be a success for me because we would have contributed significantly to driving economic, environmental, and financial and social sustainability globally from Africa. And that for me will be satisfying.
It's an interesting vision and mission. Thank you for that. One ask. We always put people on the spot with this last question. If you could ask for anything, you can't ask for money, you can't ask for customers, you can't ask for sales, you can't ask for the general. If there was something you could ask from the community watching or someone watching today, what will be the ask from you, Professor Beatrice, to that person watching?
You know, if you're out there, just be kind. The one thing I want to ask you is to be kind. Sometimes a small smile, a small hug, a look saying, don't worry, it will be fine, it makes a lot of difference in the lives of others. So my one ask for everybody out there today is that try to be kind. Make sure each day somebody smile because of you and not cry because of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Beatrice. And thank you, everyone, for watching this. Thanks again, and a massive shout out to Kelblaise Studios for giving us the platform and the opportunity. You can follow them at Kelblaise Studios on Instagram. You can follow them on YouTube and stay tuned for updates. And that's it for now. I'm Victory from Zuke Marketplace. Again, we develop businesses from idea, from hustle, whatever you're starting with, into something that can sustain you long term, so something that can pay your bills, and that's where we come in. Again, you can find out more about us on Zuke Marketplace on our socials. Just Google Zuke Marketplace and you'll find us there. And yeah, to that I say, go big.